From roads to bridges, airports to ports, urban to smart cities, infrastructure projects have evolved in nature in the Middle East and North Africa. Addressing the changing nature and dynamics of such infrastructure projects and how they are built to develop a smart city of the future, we speak to Samir Dawood, Executive Director of KEO Infrastructure, as well as Chris Fannin, the Managing Director of Insight, which is KEO's Master Planning and Landscape Allied Practice. Thank you so much for joining, Samir and Chris. It's such a pleasure to have you both here.
Well, thank you.
Pleasure is ours. Thank you.
I was actually mentioning in my intro before that the infrastructure across the region has completely evolved and transformed in nature. Hence the question for you, Samir, what kind of opportunities are you seeing in the industry, especially in the infrastructure projects for both consultants and contractors?
First of all, thank you, Ranju, for having us today, which
Pleasure.
is a great opportunity to be part of this session. Infrastructure, I always say, which is the dearest to my heart, is the base or the startup of any development for any country in any region around the world. So when you're looking at the Middle East in particular, the whole thing started with infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And the process and the cycle of infrastructure doesn't really stop. It actually evolves. And that's the beauty about what we do. Every time you're talking about a new development for any region or in any place, the first thing that the clients will think about is that what infrastructure are we going to put in?
That's right.
The beauty about what we have these days that has change from the traditional infrastructure that we were talking about before is the new infrastructure. It's sustainable infrastructure. It's a smart infrastructure.
Yeah.
And this is really the opportunity right now for the consultants and the contractors to bring that niche service and bring that innovation and creativity into the market. Clients are more receptive to that. Clients are actually proud to say that we are implementing infrastructure smart solutions. And I would have to say that the market is there. All what we need to do is just go and grab it.
Yeah, absolutely. Exciting times and obviously even more exciting venues for stakeholders. But coming to you, Chris, from a very design and architecture perspective, how do you think have the opportunities changed for companies in that sphere, specifically for your organization?
Well, I've been working in the region for 22 years. And I think one of the biggest changes is that the kind of the perception of infrastructure was, oh, Dubai Marina.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we're going to build this whole new asset. Now, in many ways, the best infrastructure is not seen. It's experienced. It enables a different kind of lifestyle. And I think, we as designers have migrated from, in some ways, the kind of the loud and the apparent to actually the focus on people's lives and wellness. And how does this supported through this infrastructure that touches us, but we don't necessarily, it doesn't engage us that same way. It just enables us to live better.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very
You can feel it, but you don't see it.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it's missing, you know it's missing.
Exactly.
But you maybe can't, it's not as tangible as, oh, here's a metro or, here's a new key or whatever it is. And so it's sort of finding that balance that we have all come to kind of need.
Yeah.
Would you call it quality of life?
Absolutely. I mean, I think from a kind of a development and society standpoint, so much of the work is about increasing the development or the time you can be outdoors.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
The shoulder seasons, right? This is the whole game. It's driving retail, it's driving, hospitality, it's driving just how people live day to day. A lot of that's tied to this kind of infrastructure.
Yeah. And I think a good example is also the Dubai 2040 Urban Master Plan. If you look at it, because you just mentioned about people well-being and the quality of life, both these things are embedded into that master plan, plus the infrastructure development that you're going to see. So I think absolutely it just ticks the right box in there. And there is a piece of cake for everyone as well. All the stakeholders working there.
Yes, well, I'm on a mission to let people know how important infrastructure is on behalf of Samir and his team.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Right.
But just taking the conversation forward, Samir, how is KU catering to the demand for the changing infrastructure and sustainable infrastructure in the region?
That's a very good question. And to tell you the truth, every company, they can be proud about what they have delivered and what they are about to deliver. The difference in KL, that the key factor of success is our people. And for us to be able to actually cope with that evolution that is happening in the market and take the infrastructure within the Middle East and globally as well into the next level is about attracting the right talents and making sure that our people are well being taken care of, are actually on top of what they're doing, and they are adopting the latest, technologies in the world. And this is what KEO infrastructure in particular has been focusing on. How are we going to make sure that we have the right resources in the right place at the right time? How are we going to be able to serve our clients in the right manner? And this is what KEO is proud about. We are really proud about our people, and I'm not exaggerating. If I look around, between my colleagues and my team members, we just have the perfect team that will be able to actually cope with all these developments that are about to happen. And that's why I always say it's exciting times, and we cannot wait to see those achievements.
Very important point there about adopting technology that you mentioned. So as someone who's heading KEO infrastructure across the region, how have you seen that kind of a change?
Huge difference. And I'll tell you why. These days, we're not looking at infrastructure as just, underground utilities and roads and bridges.
That's right.
We're looking at, like Chris mentioned earlier, about, quality of life and how we're going to get people more to the outside, enjoying the communities that they are living in. Those technologies that has actually been developed over the years and which we are utilizing right now enabled us to start looking into the well-being of our communities. And it's not only for the people that are living there right now. It's for generations to come. So when we're talking about technologies, we're talking about bringing those new models and new softwares and new approaches to the design that we're currently doing. What used to take us about a year to design is taking us now a few months. And not only that, it's not only about getting things faster. It's also about adopting new aspects into what we're doing. For example, we're looking into how we can save on the energy, how we're going to make sure that we are actually reducing the carbon emission, how we're going to be able to make sure that we're providing the best solutions to our developers, but eventually as well to the end users with what we are proposing. One of the key things that we are also focusing on by using smart technologies within our design is to look at how we can reduce the roadway utility corridor so that we can have more space for the public realms, for the people to walk around, for cycling, micro-mobilities.
Interesting points there, Samir, and I picked on the bit that you spoke about, digital transformation and adoption of technology. So how has that been for KEO specifically?
It has completely changed. If you go back to where we were more than 10, 15 years ago, we used to say there is nothing sexy about infrastructure. But these days it's completely different. The matter of fact that, the technologies that we are adopting within KEO has actually brought a new value added to the team and to our clients. So what we used to design that would take about 1 year, for example, to design, now we can do it in a few months. The new technologies enabled us actually to look into better solutions from a sustainable perspective, from cost perspective, value engineering, and focusing, for example, on reducing the energy consumption, looking into where we can add value to the developers or to the clients, but at the same time to the end clients. One of the things that, within the infrastructure revolution, I would have to say, is to focus on reducing those utility corridors and at the same time increasing the size of the plots so it generates a higher return on investment to our client, which is amazing, I would have to say. And, we wouldn't be talking about this 10, 15 years ago. So imagine for the next 10 years, what's going to happen?
Exactly.
Are we going to be talking about flying cars? Are we going to be talking about, not even driving a car whatsoever? That's also a possibility. And the beauty about us that we are keeping up with that technology as much as we can, and we keep focusing on it, which is part of KEO innovation that I would have to say.
Yeah, and definitely skypods are coming into the UAE, so you never know, you'll be in a flying car maybe.
You never know.
5 years
Absolutely.
or 10 years from now.
Don't get me wrong, I still like to drive.
Absolutely, why not? But also, interestingly, I picked your point about how you mentioned, it's important to also have the element of space. And that brings me to a question for you, Chris. I mean, obviously, we are in a post-pandemic era, and space has been one of the very important elements, designing projects now. So when you're talking about sustainable elements, how has that been built into, specifically for the projects that you are working on?
Well, it's particularly from at the master plan level, it's really changed dramatically. And it's two things. It's certainly the effect of the pandemic, but it's also the fact that many of us work from home for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
And this sort of the hybrid working model has changed the behavior pattern of a typical person who works.
Yeah.
So it means that neighborhoods and districts and entire pieces of cities, as they be built now, will be different because people will be working home 2 days a week or 1 day a week, or maybe for all the time while the kids are, whatever. So that alone has had a huge impact on the amount of space that's given over to public realm, as well as kind of the distribution of various programs, whether it's retail or entertainment or officing. So it's really changed the spatial configuration significantly. And then from a sort of health standpoint, also this idea of social distancing, which seems to be somewhat of a flexible term these days, but still, actually, you need more space. It's sort of that simple. But it's more the change from traditional working idea to the hybrid working idea is really impacting the master plans and the landscape architecture that falls out of that.
Yeah, but then since we're talking about changing master plans, also important element is embedding sustainability into it. So how would you say has that changed since COVID?
Well, I think sustainability, we've been talking about it for the 20 years I've been here. But it picked up speed during COVID. And I think because people want to get more out of the places they live. Yeah. I think it's that simple. and in a way, if it's the idea of just being able to be outdoors a month longer on either side of our hot summers, that makes a huge difference. A huge difference to family life, to professional life. So I think sustainability, the more kind of it's sort of spoken by people who aren't in our disciplines, but folks on the street.
Sure. The
more powerful it is in our disciplines, and the more important it is. I think it's ultimately underpins what being a landscape architect or a master planner is. We've always done it. Yeah. But now we have parameters that we can diagnose, and performance that we can map through the design process and the build process that allow us to actually diagnose whether what we're saying is actually happening.
Yeah, and you've definitely seen that kind of a change, most recently in projects. But coming to smart city development, Samir, would you like to talk to us about how has that changed? As someone who's worked very closely with some of the biggest projects that I mentioned earlier, one of the major elements is embedding smart cities into that. You want to build your cities for the future. When you talk about that, what kind of change have you seen in that, and what are your expectations for the future?
Very interesting question, and I'll have to say, what is the definition of smart cities? And I think this is where the debate comes in. A lot of people have been talking about smart cities, and they've been talking about it, by the way, for at least 10 years, I would have to say. The same thing with sustainability. What is meant by smart cities, and how does it affect me as an individual who's living within that city? And how does it affect the regulations? How does it affect, the government or the local authorities? Smart cities, really, to define it, is very difficult. But what is easier is actually to define the objectives. Yeah. What do we want to achieve out of having a smart city? Yeah. What kind of smart solutions do we want to have within our cities to call it smart? Yeah. Is it, about smart meters, for example, on the roads? Is it about having micromobility? And is it about safer roads? Yeah. Is it about regulating the traffic and making sure there are no traffic jams? Is it about those smart solutions with, public transits? Is it about smart irrigation systems, for example? Is it about having those detections on the leakages, or during flooding time? When do you get your pumping station operational? It's a wide range of smart solutions to be called smart cities. Yeah. And I don't think there is one definition that can just put, this is the definition of the smart city and how it looks like. Yeah. It's a huge range. It depends on the nature and the topography of the city, the weather in that area. How does it affect the community and the people? I always say it's very difficult to bring a sample project, for example, from the UK and implement it in the Middle East. Absolutely. And the same thing, and vice versa. The weather conditions, the circumstances, the topography, the culture, it's different. Yeah. So you really have to look at it from that perspective and identify the objectives that you're looking for. Everybody is talking about smart cities these days. I think the most important is to define what's the objective, what are we trying to achieve, and then everything will just happen by default.
While we're talking about smart cities, because you mentioned so many elements that we have to consider in a smart city, do you think that designing a smart city is a very challenging process, or do you think with technology in place, it has become comparatively, I wouldn't say easier, but helpful?
helpful, yes. Yeah, I mean, I think...
That's the short version.
Yeah, hopefully, yes. No, I think, you know, smart city is, you know, a lot of people think of what the notion of smart city, and it's really a monetization, right? But from a master plan standpoint, that's probably less interesting, and a public realm standpoint, than the amount of data that you can collect through a kind of smart city system. And this allows you to kind of, in real time, monitor conditions, whether it's weather, whether it's traffic, and it allows you to adapt your subsequent developments based on the data that's being. So there's a beauty to the sort of collection of all this information, and then the deployment of it over time, and being able to kind of change the way that you continue to develop or design your city. And I think that's, to me, one of the most beautiful things about a smart city idea is that it's not just, what does the market need? It's also the analysis of what's already happened in the place that you've started. Because most master plans take 15, 20 years to build. So it helps the kind of the intelligence of a city as it continues to grow.
That's right.
So to me, that's really the such an important part of that resource it creates as a kind of mindset or even a data set, if you will, that we can then kind of utilize in those next steps of development.
Yeah. So would you say that you're very conscious of the kind of design elements that come to you when you're delivering the kind of projects? Because we're talking about smart city and we are considering multiple elements.
Absolutely. The matter of fact, how you're going to put all these elements together under the same umbrella is what drives you into the delivery or the outcome that you will be looking for. Yeah. You cannot take one part and ignore the other part. You know, you've been talking earlier about, you know, the smart cities and smart infrastructure, I would have to say. But then when it comes to master planning, you cannot separate the two from each other. Yeah. You cannot just go in silos. What we always say that, Chris and I, that when we're talking about a new development, whether we're going to call it smart city, sustainable city, or, you know, social infrastructure, no matter what we do, if you don't have those elements aligned with each other, you're not going to have a successful project. And I always say that the minute that we are engaged in any project, and that's the beauty about our relationship within the company as well, that we are engaged from day one, from scratch, in preparation for the outcome that we're going to be delivering, you know, by the end of the day. When you put these elements together, you have a successful project.
That's absolutely right. And to that, I want to know from you, Chris. So how does it how does it feel working with KO, you know, bringing Insight and KO together? Because you are sister concerns, so to speak. So working in collaboration, which is a very essential element of construction. How does it help with the projects that you're working on?
Well, you know, we're all a kind of lovely dysfunctional family. We all sit at the same table, right? And, you know, but you're at the table. Yeah. There isn't a need to go find a sub-consultant, and you know, when a project starts, we're there. Yeah. You know, the teams are there, and I think one of the, you know, we had a project about 6 months ago where everyone no one could crack it. No one could sort of crack the nut. Yeah. And you know, one of the engineers on Samir's team did this sort of wobbly hand sketch. And everyone looked at it and went, "Oh my God, that's it." Yeah. And you know, people who got to witness that moment realized what collaboration's really all about and why we're at this table together. Yeah. And that's the beauty of that kind of immediacy. It didn't have to happen in another office and they get presented at a Teams meeting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it was like, he's like, "Oh, I was thinking about this," and showed it to one person, and everyone said, "Everybody come over here, let's look at this." And we're like, that's the solution. And best idea wins.
Yeah, absolutely. It does.
And as I told you before, everything starts with infrastructure. Yeah. So here you go.
Building that together.
No, but just building on what Chris was saying, the matter of fact that when you have KO infrastructure and KO Insight, Chris used to call them, or is calling them right now, the two eyes. And that term is just fascinating. And I've been using that a lot, even in front of our clients. Yeah. Not exaggerating, if you put the infrastructure team and the Insight team together in one room, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference who is who. That's how much they are integrated in the delivery of what they are delivering. And, you know, Chris mentioned that before as well. The matter of fact that our people are really engaged and they have a lot of passion to what they're doing. That's why you will see a lot of enjoyment. Yes, there's a lot of hard work. Definitely there are challenges in some particular projects. But when people are achieving the results by the end of the day, the celebration goes on. And that's the beauty about having such a team in place.
All right, now we are coming closer to the end of our discussion. So I quickly want to know from both of you all, how do you foresee the infrastructure of the future? And if you're looking at 10 years from now, what kind of changes will excite you the most? Let's hear from you first, Chris.
I think, just to me, the objective would be what's the least amount we can do for the largest impact. So we could say optimize, but it's bigger than that. It's not sort of make it even better. It's actually start with the premise, what's the absolute least I can do, the least amount of transformation necessary for the highest impact. So that, what that looks like, I'm not sure, but that's certainly, I believe, what should be our goal.
I agree with you. And I think this is where, when you look at what's going to happen in 10 years from now, it's hard to predict, but it's good to start preparing for it.
Absolutely.
And the beauty about, again, what we're doing within KAO, that we had a strategy to look at where we're going to be in 5 years and 10 years, and where the company is going to be in 5 and 10 years is in line with what's going to happen around the world. The matter of fact that we're not only focusing on the Middle East, we're also expanding globally. And it's obvious to everyone, whatever happens around the world affects the Middle East, and whatever happens in the Middle East affects the world as well. We're living in a global community, and the challenges that we are facing globally as well affects us and affects the plan for the next 10 years. And we, within KAO, I would have to say that we have that long-term vision looking at where we want to be and how we're going to be successful. But if we're looking for a long-term presence and long-term solutions, this is where we need to focus on how can I add value to the community, to the people, to ourselves as well. Then you'll have a healthy environment.
Absolutely. That approach is obviously going to take all of us as the industry, miles and miles forward. So, thank you so much, both of you all. It was such a pleasure having you.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And I'm actually enjoying my time with my brother.
Pleasure is all ours that we could host you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we wrap the interview today with Chris and Samir, I would like to leave a thought with all of you all today. We live and thrive in a post-pandemic world where we are giving a smart transformation to the infrastructure, and this has become the need of the hour. Now it is for us to decide whether or not we are delivering these projects sustainably. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and put your comments in the comments section below. We'll see you again in another exciting episode for Construction Week Middle East. Until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.